Do you know that void decks were created for purposes that you likely did not expect? Watch on to know everything about void decks because there's a reason why void decks have become smaller. So, before anything, you need to know the history of void decks. In case you are a Gen Z who only knows how to slide into people's DM instead of saying hello to a real person, you might not know that in the past, people lived in kampongs and they were close to their neighbors. Like, real close, to the extent of passing extra food to each other. Nowadays, we'll be happy if our neighbors don't start a home-based business in their units. So, that was in the 1960s to 1970s. But then, Singaporeans started to move into HDB flats. The early HDB flats built in the 1960s had no void decks. Instead, there were individual units, and people back then loved the ground units as they were kind of like kampongs. Also, some people were afraid of taking the lifts, so the ground units were highly sought after. However, as they lived there, they started to realize the drawbacks, like the lack of privacy or that they were too close to the rubbish chutes. That started to phase out soon after. While the first HDB block with a void deck was built in 1963 at Block 26 in Jalan Klinik, which is at the Bukit Merah area, HDB only started to build more blocks with void decks in 1970s. The phrase void deck was only used for 1976. But why is it called void deck? Prior to that, in 1973, HDB referred to the empty space at the ground area as a void area. People started calling it void decks when newspapers started to call it void deck from 1976, and the term was official when it was mentioned in HDB's annual report in 1977-1978. Now, this brings us to the burning question: why? Why suddenly leave a void at the ground floor? I mean, if you look at the older blocks built in the 1970s, the void deck is literally a very spacious area with nothing, except for some kids playing soccer there or playing block catching there. Well, here's the thing, it's kind of, for that although soccer was never allowed . If you're looking to advertise your business in this channel, we can help you. There are guaranteed views and many big brands have trusted us. Just click on the link in the description. Now, note that I'm only simplifying the facts, so if you want to know more, I've left the links to an NLB article and a National Heritage Board ebook in the description. You see, it all started in 1969, where HDB decided to replace the ground floor units to communal amenities such as kindergartens, childcare centers, and senior citizen clubs. They also feature basic amenities like lifts, letterboxes, bicycle racks, dustbins, public telephones, and staircase landings. However, a year later, Parliament discussed about the lack of recreational space for HDB residents. Remember, just a few years ago, these residents lived in kampong, whereby they could just lepak outside with their neighbors. It was in 1973 that the Ministry of National Development, E.W. Barker, made the decision to keep the ground floor of flats as open spaces for children. It was said that the void deck would be a shelter for children on rainy days. You see, it's also for residents to meet, interact, and bond through the regular use of shared common spaces and to provide residents with space to hold social functions, celebrations, and funeral rites. Yeah, so long story cut short, the main reason why the void deck is so empty is just so that you can do what a normal human being would do. Keep you dry and also to meet your neighbors and chat with them. Not to sit one corner when you see your neighbors or purposely walk slowly to avoid being in the same lift as them. In fact, things were built in the void deck to facilitate that, like ping pong tables, chess tables, and whatnot. But if so, why are there a lack of spacious void decks in new flats? Is it because people started to use Facebook, Instagram, or even wholivesnearyou.com to connect? Wow, if you have used Who Lives Near You before, then you must be giving angpaos this CNY. Well, no lah. You see, remember, the function of void decks in older flats is for residents to connect through communal spaces. But in the 1990s, new HDB flats can achieve that by introducing other communal spaces. No lah, not through wholivesnearyou.com lah. Instead, there are car park roof gardens, outdoor community malls containing benches, and children's playgrounds, as well as pristine pavilions. In fact, you realize that newer flats often have many of these communal spaces around the flats, while older HDBs will not have them. So yes, this is why you are still seeing seniors hanging out at HDB void decks, because that was indeed what they were used for. Of course, nowadays, with us even losing the basic communication skills due to the internet, building countless communal spaces will also be useless. And do you know that it's brain rot content that could have contributed to this? Watch this and you'll know how brain rot content is making your life worse based on science. Also, if you want to advertise with us, even as a standalone video, do contact us. Thank you for spending almost 4 minutes with me. I really appreciate it and hope you learned something.